Chapter 13. This is what the letter said that I found in the map case. Dear Tellafrogs, after the troubles with the former Mexican army and the bandits, the rape and torture of the locals and several other nearby families, I prayed to God for some way to help. I prayed for a week and fasted every day of that week. I was kneeling in the fountain stone room behind the scriptorium, praying, when I felt a shock in my hand, as you might feel on a cold, dry day. In that moment, I felt that God was guiding me on how to help those in my flock. I put my hand back on that mossy spot next to the fountain stone, and it told me to dig up a tree's root and bring it to the fountain. I did. The next day I went to pray, and it had changed the stick somehow. I thought it was God who had done it. When Mr. Loggins came with his terrible story, I gave it to him to use against the bandits if they came back. I knew when you told me about what had happened to them, it had to have been that stick. I knew I shouldn't have trusted that. Leviticus 19:31. I turned to sorcery, and it defiled me. That mark spread up my arm and across my chest, just like it did John. Just like John and Mary Loggins. Whatever that was, it's in the room behind the big wardrobe. I covered the fountain stone with a cloth to hide it. That stone in the fountain was brought here in 1812 when a nearby farmer found it. No one knew what it was, but it didn't seem natural, so they hid it there. I used the room for solitude. I was a fool. All of this is my fault for not trusting God, but instead looking for signs and retribution. I am so sorry. Please forgive me. Father Callious. I was about to call Barthou over, and then I remembered what Professor Templeton said. If it were possible to solve this problem without allowing knowledge of this, now obviously some dark power, to spread, I should. I decided to tell Barthou that I'd like to head back home, if he'd be all right with staying and explaining about Father Callious to the new arrivals. He agreed, so I saddled up and went on out, heading home as promptly as I could. I didn't have any way to make more sagebrush, but I could still make it before dark if I didn't get sidetracked. Maybe due to the previous day's storm, I heard dozens of animals feverishly running around in the distance as I made my way home. Gophers, couch whips, snakes, rattlers, and even some coyotes are rustling around, rounding up the remains of other small animals from the storm-damaged area. All were too busy to concern themselves with my trip, and, without incident, I made it home after the sun had set, but before it was dark. Mother was happy to see me, and went on about how she was sorry we couldn't do more to help Artyrus and Father Callious. She reminded me, correctly, that had I been with them, I would have died as well. Maybe so, but that never really helps. No one could know what level of fighting and resistance they were able to tolerate. Knowing all that had happened to lead to their anger, that fury was uncontrollable for the Comanche. They had lost so much more in that terrible storm than anyone else in 100 miles. Mother had already spoken to Professor Templeton about Barthou bringing Artyrus here. He said that Clement and Monica had not yet arrived in Vienna, but he would let us know as soon as they did. She said the professor was very adamant that the stick be preserved, which she showed him was in a hex jar already. I finished getting the horse put up and doing the chores for the other horse as well. I also spent a few minutes telling Artyrus's horse that he was gone, brushing and comforting him, before heading inside right after darkness had fallen completely. "Mother, is the professor there?" I asked as I went to wash up. She looked that way and said, "No, it doesn't look that way." "Okay. Do you have a minute to read this? I found it hidden where Artyrus and Father Callious died. Father Callious, I think, wrote it while Artyrus fought off the attack by himself. Then he hid it under a wardrobe in that basement room they were in." I pulled it out of the map case and handed it to her. When she saw the heading, she sat down to finish reading. By the end of the letter, her hand was covering her mouth, and the corners of her eyes were downturned, feeling the sadness and desperation Father Callious had leading to all of this. She looked back at the portrait, and I guessed the professor still wasn't there. "He will need to see this. We will stay awake until we see him, and I will hold it up so he can read it. This is not the kind of thing we need to let go of. I mean, to pass by owl or any other means to anyone." She was very serious about it. The maternal concerns about what had happened to our friends had drained away, replaced with somber intellectual fortitude. "Put this with the root wand, and son, protect that satchel with your life. The professor has seemed more and more anxious about these reports, and I feel this will make him acknowledge some fear he's been frantic to avoid finding." She held it up to me, and I folded it, wrapped it in a piece of deerskin made with straps designed to keep important documents safe from the elements. Father had dozens of these, as often paperwork for prisoners came and was sent in them. "Has the professor mentioned anything about Artyrus yet? What should be done?" I asked over dinner. "He said we should keep him in a suspended state until we speak with Clement. He is currently in his room, and I have him in a state where he is floating above his bed. I went ahead and packed all his things neatly, and collected personal things from his horse rigging as well." She didn't eat much, and was already drinking her evening tea. "I found his wand, which we can pack in his things also. It lay broken just outside the basement refuge. It explains why he was unable to survive, heal himself, or last very long. Barthou thinks, and I agree, that he was apparently hit by an arrow right outside the door to the basement and dropped it. He had no choice but to retreat down to the basement, barricading the door with his wand outside. The attackers presumably broke it, since they were blaming the tornado on Father Callious' imagined alliance with magic against them," I explained. "He was very strong and brave. He stood to protect the helpless priest, and did so, giving his life. Protecting those who cannot defend themselves is the instinct of every natural-born soldier." She tried to reassure me. The problem is, I know that the attackers were unwaveringly brave as well. They were taking the remnants of their tribe to attack what they felt were unimaginable odds that had brought evil amongst them. It is always a failure to try and talk and find common ground that leads to bloodshed. But that is where all humans find themselves, between those filled with rage and vengeance and those defending against the rage. It's in the bloodshed that we struggle between the two. Most folk think it is unimaginable to kill someone else. They do, until someone else is going to kill them. So ignorance of real human nature is just as much to blame. We waited maybe 2 hours after dinner, and I had dozed off in a high-backed armchair when Mother shook me awake. "Is here, the professor. Bring the letter, please." I had tucked that inside my vest, or she might have retrieved it herself, but I wanted to try and listen to at least one side of this conversation now. At least 8 people had died for this. So I got it out, opened the leather, and handed it to her. She had already shown him the hex jar, which was in the corner behind the chair I was in. I took both and handed them to my mother, and sat on the corner of the table nearest to their discussion. She held the jar up first, I guess to let him know it was still safe. Then she held the letter right on the canvas for him to read. A few minutes passed, then Mother gasped. "Professor, behind you! Is that a—" She could barely breathe enough to say more, covering her mouth with her free hand. "What is it, Mother?" I tried, but only got a hand indicating for me to stop, so I waited. "Professor, he's gone," Mama said. She looked panicked, trying to peer into the professor's room. Then she turned to me, went pale, and a paralyzed expression flooded over her. I realized she was looking behind me. I slapped my hand on the pistol grip, stood and spun around in a single motion, only to be levitated and every limb and digit extended as far apart as possible without pain, before I even got turned around. "Please, Mary and Raileanu, I mean you no harm. Be calm, the voice said, and I finally got around where I could see what was happening. Mother then turned towards the portrait, as the professor must have been speaking. It's all right, son. This is a friend of the professor. Please, let him speak with us, Mamma said. I will. I'm okay. You can release me, I said calmly. Maybe someone finally had some darn answers about the things that are killing everyone I know, I thought. I was lowered gently down, all of my limbs returning to my own control. I am the one who can stop this. I am Kleet. I am a high elf. If you will allow me to explain and confirm what you may know or have seen, stopping this is why I am here, if you will let me help, the high elf said. Made sense, so I sat down for what had better be answers. I was ready for someone to make some sense. All I've done is find vague clues, clean up death, and lose those closest to me. This man, high elf, was in the painting with the professor. When he read the letter with the professor, he came here instantly, Mamma said. I apologize. I never will. Didn't even think the high elves were real. I'm sorry, sir. This was clearly no man. He was close to 7 feet tall, shoulders at least 36 inches across, very long, straight, pure white hair, pointed ears, and clothing that, while intended to appear normal, was, well, vague at best. It was hard to focus on, as the light gray was uneven, and even the length of the overcoat varied and changed while standing still. He had very sharp features, and the eyes, from deep within, pulsed to emit their own blue light. His shirt, vest, pants, and boots appeared to be a much older style, and were also varying shades of gray. His boots resembled suede, but had no buckles or laces. Another thing, he was controlling my body with no wand. Heck, he wasn't even looking at me when he did it. I sat down on the couch, ready to try to solve and whatever all this mystery. I gave the elf a blank stare. Rare, mythical, unconcerned with the troubles of us or not for thousands of years, it was concerned now about what was happening with our circumstances. I have worked with the professor since the beginning of your father's troubles here. We keep the master copy of the book. We monitor it for traces of ancient, what you call, magic. Some of it, after more than 13,000 years we have existed, has remained from that time. Some were not designed for good uses, but for harm. We collect and store knowledge. When we find traces of this ancient magic, or relics of that time, we retrieve or eliminate them so they can never be used again. What happened to your father, the root wand, the human lady and her husband, and even Father Callious being convinced to do it, they were all part of it, part of this system we are bound to destroy. The lack of emotion displayed must be part of their charm, but it was grating on me. I'm sorry, Kleet? Why the hell have you merely lingered around the edges of this while my father, my friend, hell, even Monica are being killed and tormented? My unbridled anger animated my hands and movements while seated. It would unnerve anyone, and I struggled to restrain it. Forgive my tone, but I am sick of digging graves. Please, I want to end all this. I'm upset. I spoke in an unfriendly manner, but not for a lack of trying to be polite. It just came out that way. We could not. You must understand. Unfortunately, with dangerous knowledge, there are always those, both magical and ordinary, who will seek to find and use it. Several thousand years ago, one of the books we designed to help us find these things was stolen. It cannot be read as ours, but when it is being used, The writing appears briefly and can be copied from it, the same as Professor Templeton's copy. Those who seek those forbidden powers have used this book before to try to trap us and collect these things for themselves. We refuse to engage directly or leave our sanctuary until we are certain of events and locations. For us, it is genuinely a risk to all life on Earth if we are captured or discovered. But these scattered remnants and the pain they cause are worth the risk. We must be certain before we can try and help. That is all I can say. The High Elf never changed tone, stance, or cadence. As he spoke, I began to understand. From the beginning, the Professor and Clement tried to tell me this was very important. All of this had happened in a short amount of time, and the Professor's increasingly urgent tone was more obvious as I looked back now. I reluctantly shook my head in agreement. So, this artifact, or whatever it may be, that you think is behind this, where do you think it is? I asked. From what the letter indicates, it may be in the room of the basement Father Callious mentioned. I think I know what it is. It will be too difficult to explain, nor should I explain, but if you can take me there, I can retrieve it and remove it to safety. I cannot dislocate, sir. I have not been able to. I lost my... Kleet cut me off with a raised hand and a slow blink as he turned his head towards me. Raileanu, I know. I am a high elf, not a wizard. It's sufficient to say that if you can take me by the arm, imagine the location we must go. I can take myself there. Just as I came here. It is too dangerous now for you to go with me, regardless. You must stay and protect your mother. As I said, the harassment of Monica is proof enough that nefarious magical forces are lurking around this incident. The protection of this place will work for ordinary people, but determined magical persons will not be dismayed by any of it. Please, if you will follow me. He reached for my arm. I closed my eyes and imagined the mission, the chapel, the back exterior door that led to the basement, and that large wardrobe, the extent of my knowledge of the place he sought, which was described in Father Callius's letter. Then he was gone. No poof, no whoosh, silent, and as though a door stepped through him. Mother went straight to the portrait of the Professor. She was asking if there was anything else she could know about this elf, and what else may be known about the killing of my father. How his illness was connected. It seemed he had no more information than we did. Not even the Professor had any idea if Kleet was even coming back, here or to London at all. Barthou had stayed at the mission and was helping the few men from the other mission get settled, knowing that the questions they may have surrounding the death of Father Callious may present themselves later in the evening, and he wanted to ease their concerns before he left. He also had some explaining to do about his duties in the area. These were not magical people, nor cleared to work with them, so he had to be on his best behavior. They were, in fact, brothers from the Carlos family, Juan, Jamie Jr., and the youngest, Javier. They would be responsible for preparing the mission for use when a new padre would be assigned. Even with the work Barthou had done to clean up, the state of the place had been in decline for some time. The brothers would begin rebuilding tomorrow and making the whole place ready to receive new congregants. Tonight, they shared a hearty beef stew that Barthou had prepared before their arrival, along with 2 large pots of saltwater cornbread. None of them had any idea of the discoveries of the last few hours. Kleet arrived in the basement, where I had shown him. He surveyed the room, and with a flick of his eyes, the huge, heavy wardrobe slid across the floor. He was not concerned about the others who were outside. I wasn't sure if they had arrived, or if I should mention that Barthou would be there. He pushed it with whatever power he wielded against the far wall. Behind it was a very old door, perhaps even original to the mission. A couple of 100 years, perhaps, in that dry, dark basement. It had a large, heavy iron lock on the bolt latch. Kleet broke that and it clanked to the floor, again, with no more than a thought. Barthou heard both, but decided to investigate only after the metallic clunk. He had eaten before they arrived, so he was happily engaging in friendly, comforting talk with the new stewards of the mission. He excused himself, as they were still eating after he heard the sound, and said he would check on it. It could have been a raccoon, possum, snake, skunk, fox, wildcat, or anything snooping around downstairs, so he wasn't concerned about actual trouble. In fact, he had begun packing some of his own shells, a small paper pouch of number 4 shot held in the bore of the cylinder with wax. He had a mold for that size in his pack, and would always dig out lead from stumps he practiced on, and figured it'd be a better use of resources to make shot shells for his pistol and rifle when it was only small varmints. And this would be a good time to try it out. It also didn't blast big holes in things, as long as he had a bit of distance. So he pulled the lead slug cylinder out and put in his 6-shot shell cylinder as he walked to the door. Kleet went into the hidden room, which was small and quite dirty. After walking into the center, he turned to his left and saw a tarp over something, maybe 4 feet high and 3 feet wide. He heard the footsteps coming through the door upstairs, paused, and waited until they were halfway down the stairs. Then, with a thought, he froze Barthou, who could no longer think or move. He had no idea it had happened, nor would he when released from it. Kleet then had the tarp whipped off, making the dust and dirt of decades built up on it freeze in the air until the tarp was on the floor. Then it all fell straight down. Underneath was a stone frame over a small copper spout that emerged from the wall, trickling water. At its base was a wide granite basin, filled with water that overflowed and ran into a crack in the floor. In the basin was the source of the High Elf's interest. He recognized it right away. It was a primitive, yet obviously powerful granite crystal silicon orb that emitted an uneven twinkling light from within, visible to magical individuals and Kleet. I had gone to get some coffee from the kitchen stove, while Mother was talking to the painting some more. I glanced up as I poured the coffee. They were still talking, so I thought I'd pour Mama one as well. Suddenly, in mid-sentence, she was thrown, or jerked to the left, into the corner of the room away from the painting, and where I couldn't really see, but it looked violent, with a scream indicative of bone-breaking pain. I dropped the pot and cup, drew my pistol, and dashed to the right for a better look at what happened. She was held from behind by a man I'd never seen, with a long, slender-bladed knife to her neck. Who the hell was this, threatening my mother? I pointed my pistol at his face, confident I could end his depraved mind in an instant. Whoever this was, a line was crossed, and now my mother was my only concern. The long, unkempt, thick black and white hair, scraggly, patchy beard growth, and dark discoloration around the mouth and eyes told me this person had been taking various potions I had seen used before to increase speed, strength, and focus. They're commonly used by assassins, mercenary groups, and thieves, but also showed that he was not ordinary. From his other hand slowly raised a wand and pointed at me. Bandos emerged from the back of the house, through the kitchen, and glanced at me quickly before his yellow eyes darted to the corner he was approaching. He silently moved his legs, his body fixed. I saw all this out of the corner of my eye. His snout was already curled, nose pointing straight ahead, huge wolf teeth jittering with fury, legs only moving from his knees down. Maybe he could give Mama a second to get away, and I could stop this monster. Maybe. The next series of events was no more than 3 seconds, but moved so slowly for me. And it stays that way in my mind. Always. I can't seem to remember it any other way. As soon as Bandos got to the corner, I accidentally looked at him. The bastard wizard saw it, moved the wand to that corner. Bandos jumped at him, a flash erupted, obscured by Bandos's body, exploded no doubt from the wand. Bandos's front right paw tried to go for the knife to block it away from Mama. Mama tried to push the man's arm away from her throat. Her back to him, she couldn't see the marks of added strength and speed. Her effort didn't work. Bandos bit furiously at his neck, for just a moment, until he stopped. He looked as though he was suspended in the air, or on him. The man swung his left arm, the one around Mama holding the knife, and effortlessly flung her to the side, while cutting her throat more deeply than anything I'd ever seen in the same motion. I saw her terror as it happened, as her life ran out so fast. So fast. She lay there face down, slightly on her side with bent legs, for only 3 or 4 seconds before she collapsed completely. By the time I had looked back to try and sight down the barrel, my pistol was gone from my hand, floating a foot in front of the still hanging Bandos. That is when I saw the tip of this bastard's wand protruding through Bandos's fur, barely an inch or two. He was killed with a curse and then impaled on the wand. He lowered his arm, dropping a lifeless Bandos and my pistol to the ground. He was wearing a very lightweight but coarse long shirt that was filthy, stained with black fibers. He had a wide belt with large and small pouches on it, and a black leather satchel. His boots were a dark, almost knee-high brown, with buckles. All of this pointed to the common attire of European criminal wizards. He whipped his wand with a flick towards me, and my own pistol cracked me in the forehead, and my head lunged back. I grabbed my head and knelt in pain. There he was, his wand, still dripping with blood from Bandos, onto my cheek, pointed at my left eyeball, the knife at my throat. "Tell me, boy." Heavy Central Eastern European accent. "Where is the elf? I will not kill you if you tell me now." His breaths definitely stank of vile potions I have no knowledge of. I saw little choice. "The old Spanish mission, west of here, about 5 miles. I mumbled with indignant fury. He withdrew the wand and the blade, then thrust it sharply into my right side and dislocated. What the hell just happened? I could feel quite a bit of blood oozing from the narrow slit he had left me with. I tried to stand, but rapidly fell from blinding lightheadedness. I needed to get to the kitchen, and there was a jar of dried lion's mane mushroom I knew could stop the bleeding and close the hole. I crawled over to the cabinet, used the counter to pull myself up, reached shakily to the top cupboard, and pulled the jar down with me to the floor. I fought to get my vest and shirt open, and I got a handful of the powder, forcing it into the hole with my thumb until it felt full. Then I passed out. Kleet was about to inspect closely the area surrounding the little basin, trying to understand the way this had reached the outside world, when he heard the unmistakable sound of explosive and ripping curses upstairs. He promptly walked into the main room of the basement, just in time to see a massive fireball envelop Barthou and knock his still paralyzed figure into Kleet, and they both fell on the ground. Kleet saw the figure approaching down the stairs and filled the whole shaft with a thunderous streams of lightning. The figure jumped the remainder of the steps to the bottom, still on fire, streams of electricity jumping off him to the nearest chair or wall. Kleet stood, but before he could do anything else, this wizard repaid his pain with a sheet of cleaving electrical fury onto the elf, who got most of it on his left side. He fell and, with just a glance, eviscerated the man, shearing all his muscles and connective tissues from his skeleton, which fell in a steaming heap on the floor. Kleet stood, snapped his fingers, and a pointed silver canine tooth from this bastard was ripped from his skull and leaped into his hand. He tried to stand up, but the damage from the strike he took was quite bad, and he stumbled a few times. He wasn't bleeding as much as he was suffering from extreme burns, and parts of his whole left flank, leg, arm, and neck were fused and stinking already, crackling the burnt flesh as he tried to move. It was bad, and his concentrating to try and produce any healing wasn't working. Very well, he thought. He would be lucky to get the orb and deliver it to Raileanu and his mother for their protection. He staggered into the other room, put his hand on the orb, and was back in the Tellafrog's home, lying on the couch, clutching the orb. He looked around in severe pain, only now realizing that his left eye had been wrenched from the socket and burned off, and then winced when he saw what had happened there. He took the tooth he had collected and laid it on the table. He saw me sitting in the kitchen, unconscious. He snapped his fingers and brought me awake. "Come here, Raileanu. Let me heal that for you," he forced out. "He had been here. That's how he knew where to find me, I see," Kleet said calmly. "Now you can see how serious this is." "Where is that bastard? Where is he? He killed my mother. He killed Bandos!" I screamed at him, tears pouring from my eyes as I crawled to him, retrieving my pistol along the way. "I'm sorry, Raileanu. He also killed everyone at the mission before I knew he was there. He almost killed me. I destroyed him. His body lies ripped apart, flesh from bone on the floor of the basement," he said. When I finally got close to him, he reached over and touched my side, which felt warm and fuzzy, and as I watched, closed up with not so much as a scar. Kleet's eyes were closed as he did it, and stayed closed as he put his hand back on the strange orb he had. Half of his body, from head to calf, was completely seared. "Can you heal yourself the same way?" I asked, as his pain had to be terrible. "I have tried, but it may not heal. I may die here," he mumbled. "Elves can die?" I asked. "Yes, like any other creature God made. Yes, we can die. There is, however, no disease or aging we suffer from. Please, I am not able to see very well, and my ears are damaged from the fighting. I will tell you about this orb, and you will need to contact the professor somehow as soon as you can. Please tell him everything as well. I don't have more than an hour, I suspect. The time has come to bring more of you into this endeavor, as we fear the world is proceeding down a dark path that is unavoidable for magic or ordinary people." "Sir, Kleet, my mother is lying there, dead. A medicine man who has become that wolf to try and protect her lies just there," pointing to them both, still full of fury, and eyes dripping with tears. "My father died not a week ago." "I know, Raileanu. We have watched you for essentially your whole life. Let me do what I can." He closed his eyes and was silent for a moment. "Hey, wake up!" I yelled at him. Mother lost all her agony in her face. Her blood, just a moment ago, splattered all over, was gone. She looked serene and began to straighten her form, settling into what appeared to be a peaceful sleep. Then she began to appear dimmer and dimmer until she vanished. Then Kleet took a few breaths, and Bandos, too, looked to lose a gore of his demise, and then turned into a white, glowing cocoon that extended to 5 feet. The light lashed away, and he was in his human form again. In full regalia for a ceremonial burial, he, too, vanished. I looked at Kleet, who had several tears on his cheeks running down behind his ear, as he was mostly reclined on the couch. He breathed deeply several more times and opened his eyes. I don't know if he was as emotional at these events, or even his own impending death, or if he was in immense pain. "Oh, what have you done with them?" I yelled again. "Your mother lies in repose with your father. The inscriptions on Barthau's tomb updated to show their lives of love and sacrifice. Bandos has returned atop a pyre to his people. They deserve to see his accomplishments and celebrate his life before he is given back to the universe with fire. I hope this is acceptable. It has taken most of the life I have left in me. They both deserved the best I could do. Now, before I begin, do you wish to write these things down, or would you like me to try for you? What follows is taken from my actual scribblings as Kleet spoke, and it may seem disconnected or confusing, but trust me when I say at the time I was even more confused than you might be. In order to retain the nature of the story and fully explain the nature of the fumblings and errors made henceforth, it is necessary to be presented in its original manner as I received it. In further volumes, the gravity and breadth of the High Elf story will be made plain to grasp. All right, okay, no, I can. I wiped my face and tried to compose myself. Did you see Barthou at the mission? Yes, he too, I am afraid, was killed. He was there trying to protect them from this vile attack. I am too weak to do anything else with magic. Let me begin. Kleet tried to sit up some, but didn't make it far, and just gave up, resigning to explain from his reclined position. Your world is not a straight line from wilderness, or even the Garden of Eden, to where we are now. There were at least 3 great ages of technological advances of mankind, and we are in the last 300 years now of this seemingly repeating cycle. With the time I have, I will only discuss the last one, as it is the most relevant, given that only 2 relics from the previous period have been found in the last 11,000 years. Neither were they functional, nor did they have any use to anyone. Before the last great calamity, such knowledge and technical ability had been achieved that there were no limits for humans. Almost every living person on Earth was able to do what you call magic, but to levels even wizards today cannot believe, even if they witnessed it. After the calamity, the numbers of what you call magical now were less than 100 in the whole world, surviving from the time before. The descendants of those 100 are the ones called pureborn now. They are a remnant, but no more pure than any other. They were used by the most powerful survivors of ordinary humans, for they far outnumbered those left with magical abilities as slaves. Around 8,000 years passed, and the world had achieved so much more. We, what you call the High Elves, and the other magical races, including shapeshifters, dwarves, goblins, ogres, dragons, all were created in that last 100 years of great advancement before the calamity. Created by design, by desire, anyone could be anything they dreamed. Some even created machines in human form to serve or fight on their behalf. All of this was made possible by things like this orb. The creators thought it was life, of a sort. They were created intelligences. Many groups of humans made them, some benign, some diabolical. This one is directly related to you, Raileanu, to your loss of magic. The dragon you saw that day was a copper dragon, yes? It is one of the survivors that was created during that time. They draw power from storms and the heat of volcanoes. He is over 14,000 years old. He was created for one purpose, to capture any form of this CG that they detected in the heavens, falling to Earth. He was trying to catch it when the lightning ripped between you both. The magic being destroyed by the power of this lightning in you disrupted his ability to find the orb. It fell here, in this region, and lay dormant for all these years, until someone brought it to the mission, and, unaware of what it was, they stored it in the basin under the chapel. He paused to catch his breath. CG? I asked. an abbreviation for Crystalline Integrated General Intelligence. This one is simply CIGI, and it was not the worst of them. There were ones far more powerful, and some of those also are not accounted for. It must have been above the clouds, and for whatever reason, it fell from the sky. More things are circling above the earth than you know. There are dozens of them still circling the earth, unable to communicate with or work together, as differing, sometimes warring factions of humans created them. This one seems to be able to communicate only with what you call magical people, and my theory is that after enough time, a single thread of roots, spreading throughout the water table, found its way into the prison, where a person with magical abilities was talking to it. I suspect that both Father Callious and the prisoner were asking and receiving information without knowledge of the other. This orb was just facilitating the connection. Father Callious wanted to help his people. The orb knew the plant life in the water table, and the prisoner, along with records of knowledge in the orb itself, gave an answer that would help him. But these are also dangerous. This one wreaked havoc in this remote area, just doing what it was designed to. Imagine if that monster of a person who just killed your mother had access to one. There are arts and abilities these CIGI know of that you cannot possibly imagine. Really? Today I can imagine some terrible things, sir, I pointed out. What kind of things? Like what led to their demise that long ago? Oh, so much worse. How they ended all those years ago is similar to what has happened here. It is that path the world is on now, to the same place. At that time, when we chose to be created in our current form, we do not age or suffer illness. Kleet paused, breathing raspily and deeply for a moment. Our bodies repair themselves, unless damaged as I am. The sources of this are too complicated for you to grasp now, but they are the same things that are passed along through generations in magical people. It is also how you and Clement have lost your power. It lets us see and control all forces in our world, a feat once thought impossible by science without CIGI. Once the leaders of the world had access to the power of these tools, many of them became concerned with their newfound power and began to delegate important tasks to the CIGIs. Not all were as well made or reliable. Most have stopped working, either due to their own faults, design, or material issues. There are metaphors, yes, ones you can or have observed falling in the night sky. 12,800 years ago, a city-sized object was coming directly toward the Earth. The leaders had given power to their CIGI to destroy it, years before its suspected arrival. Many of us, dedicated to amassing knowledge and nothing more, had warned of the risks of the proliferation of these tools and power given over to them, but to no avail. After none of them wanted to stop their pursuits or admit that a seemingly flawless system may have faults, we, along with many others, sought refuge deep within the earth, calculating that the risk was too high to avoid protection from this impending disaster. We were right, but not for the reason we thought. He stopped, wincing with pain, and asked for some water, so I took out my flask and gave it to him. After a few sips, he rested again for a moment, his breathing worsening. At first his left hand was the only one showing signs of damage, shaking. Now both were, and his fingers and hands also seemed to be held in unnatural ways, like a person might if they had frostbite or they had been crushed. After another couple of attempts to drink, but mostly pouring out the corners of his mouth, he handed the flask back to me. The separation and incompatibility of the CIGI systems were for everyone's protection, but were also the reason for the disaster. Then the group that had spotted and announced it would deal with the asteroid simply went back to whatever it was they were doing. The CIGI shot huge rockets at the asteroid on time, as planned. I think there were 3. One failed halfway up in the sky, but as soon as the 3 launched, all the other CIGIs who were put in control of defenses in other nations detected the launches, assumed they were being attacked, and launched similar weapons to defend themselves. The power of those missiles is more than any human alive today can imagine. I cannot describe it in a way you can comprehend. I'm sorry. Once every place on Earth tracked one launch, they too launched their attacks. It was all automatic. All the CIGIs were doing exactly what they thought they should be doing. Even before the first 2 missiles that had made it near the asteroid had detonated, most of the Earth's surface was destroyed, or soon would be by fire. Only one made it to the target, and that broke it into 1,000 pieces, which fell to the earth, causing even more destruction. Only those of us underground, or near what used to be the poles, survived. It was not easy, and for nearly 100 years, many of us died trying to survive. Those who did not die later went out into the world to find it practically the lowest form of human existence. Very little language had survived. Nothing was familiar in the landscape, the people, or anything else. It was during this time that we became known as Fae, or elves. We were the only fully changed beings that still existed. The other magical races survive, of course, but many of their traits were specific to single purposes, some even created against their will to serve others. Because our power was permanent, and we alone understood the tools and techniques required to allow full mastery of the known universe, we stayed separate. There was no help we could offer to humanity that would genuinely benefit them. It could only accelerate their inevitable path to the same place we are now heading. Our mission, out in the world beyond our enclaves, is to consolidate the old relics, preserve their power from the rest of the world, and store as much knowledge as possible from the beginning of our time as possible. This is why there can be no more elves, why there are so few magical people. We cannot procreate, by design, and along with us, magical people are the only ones with the tools for manipulation of the unseen world built into themselves. Again he paused, his words becoming softer and further apart. The man-made soldiers I spoke of earlier, there are possibly thousands, either buried after the great destruction of the missile's fire, or the asteroid impact that followed. Some circle the earth, entombed in metal shells above the skies. They are genuinely terrifying, unstoppable, and could be controlled with the matching CIGI that made them. I think the witch, Runetta, and her henchman, who came here tonight, have at least one of those soldiers, and also seek that what was going on here is related to what they seek. No wanton bloodshed with such sickening violence has been hoisted on magic or ordinary worlds in centuries as we saw here tonight. They are not to be allowed to get this orb. You must get the professor here to take it and protect it at all costs. My kind will find him and secure it. You understand now. Please, say you do. He trailed off. Kleet, I'm here. I understand, and I swear it, I will. On my whole family, I swear, I said without pause. Can we not just destroy it? I panicked as if it were a good idea. No, none of us can. Take it to the professor is all I can. His eyes shut, his hands dropped, and the tension from pain in his body relaxed. This man, this high elf, was dead.